Let's make the sincerity square. This is a granny square that is a little bit more solid than the traditional one with plenty of texture. For this square, you're going to need 4 colors in your yarn. I'm using the Touch of Linen yarn from Lion brand in indigo, Dijon, terracotta, and then clay. And this yarn is from the Touch of Luxe line, and it is a medium yarn, but I would consider it a pretty light medium yarn. So these are the 4 colors that we're using, and you're going to need various amounts of them for the different rounds. For this design, we're using a G or 4mm hook. You'll need a tapestry needle for weaving in your ends, unless you're going to use another method, and a small pair of scissors. There are 5 rounds in this square, and the first 2 are done in this indigo color. So to start, we're going to make a magic circle, which I do by creating a chain stitch that I leave open and not pulling it tight. Then we're going to chain 2. And we're going to start the first round by doing it just like a totally classic granny square. So this actually counts as our first double crochet stitch. We're going to do 2 more double crochet stitches into our magic circle. Then we're going to chain 3, 3 more double crochet stitches. Again, this is a totally classic granny square for our first round, so if you know how to do that, you probably know exactly how the rest of this round is going to go. Next, do 3 chain stitches, and then 3 more double crochet stitches. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull this a little bit tighter so you can see our square forming here. 3 more chain stitches, 3 more double crochet stitches, and then finally 3 more chain stitches. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this nice and tight, and I'm going to slip stitch my last chain stitch together with the top of my first set of chains here. So this is my first round. It looks like a teensy tiny little granny square. Now round 2 of this square is totally done as a solid. That's a solid round of double crochet stitches, continuing to increase for our square though. So how that works is we're going to start where we are by chaining 2. Then we're going to double crochet into the top of these next 2 stitches, just like this. And then we're going to create our granny square corner. So we're going to double crochet 3 more into the corner, and then chain 3 and double crochet into the corner 3 times again. All done. Now I can slip stitch into the top of my chain stitches where I started. This is what I have so far. And I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. And I'm going to go ahead and bind off. You can simply color change here to start the next round, but I have enjoyed just starting my yarn wherever I want. So I'm just going to make sure this is coming out about the same size. Yep, that's looking really nice. And this is it for the indigo yarn for this square. So your first 2 rounds are in the same color. Our next part of the square, round 3, is done in the Dijon color in this square, and it goes back to having open spaces as part of the really classic granny square. So you can start wherever you want in the round, and the only thing to really pay attention to with this round, as long as you know how to do a classic granny square, is properly counting your stitches to put the stitches in the middle of each side in the right place. To start round 3, I like to just come in at a corner and attach my yarn. Sometimes I do a slip knot to do that, sometimes I don't. And I'm just going to go ahead and start by chaining 2 and then double crochet 2. Since this is a corner, we need 3 double crochets, but the chains count as our first one. Let's go ahead and do the chains for our corner, put in the other double crochets over here. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to chain 3 and get our stitches placed right in the middle. So we know that we need to count 1, 2, 3 from where we are, but we also just know that we need to go into the middle 3 stitches, which would be these right here. So that's how I place these. And just take your time, because having those centered is going to really make these look nice and neat. And then we do 3 more chain stitches and continue with our next corner. So this round is really, really simple, and hopefully you won't have much difficulty with it. When we get around to where we started, we will have 3 chains and then slip stitching into where we started at that corner. At this point, you're going to chain the last 3 and just slip stitch into the top of the chain stitches that you used to start this round. And this is the only round in this color, so you can go ahead and cut the yarn and bind off here. The very last round of our square is solid double crochet again, except for our increases at the corners. But this next round we're about to do, round 4, is the most visually interesting round of our square, and it's done in the blocked bead stitch. The reason that this stitch works so well is because each blocked bead stitch repeat takes up 3 stitches, so it fits really well inside of a granny square where we usually have repeats of 3 stitches already. For this square though, I did keep the increases the same. So at the corners, you'll see we've got just 3 double crochet stitches again, and the same number, 3 chains in the middle. So I'm going to start adding this round to this square by, again, just adding my yarn at a corner, and I'll go ahead and start by getting the basic corner out of the way, and then I'll show you how the blocked bead stitch works so well in this square. So here's how the blocked bead stitch works. You are going to start by creating the bead portion, which has a lot of loops of yarn wrapped around it. We start in the same way we start a double crochet stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, and draw a loop through. Now we're going to yarn over and draw through 2 of the loops like we would for a double crochet, but stop there for a moment. Now we're going to do our wraps around the base that we've created. So we yarn over, and you're going to wrap behind the post of the stitch, pick up the yarn, yarn over, and bring it back to the front. And then do that 2 more times. So yarn over, work behind the post, yarn over, and bring it to the front. Okay, now 1 more time. Now we have quite a few loops. I believe you should have 7. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7. No, so you should have about 8 loops on your hook so far. You've got this one over here and then all of the ones that you've created just now. And we're going to go ahead and go under these now. So yarn over again and draw that through all of these loops that you just added, but not your final one. So you've got 2 loops on your hook now. And now you're going to yarn over and go into both of those. So it creates a little bit of separation there. And there's your bead as part of your blocked bead stitch. And I'm going to show you all this at least one more time, so don't worry. The next part is to create the blocked portion that looks smooth. And to do this, we are going to do an extended single crochet. But first, we do need to skip a stitch. The bead takes up so much room that it needs to cover over that extra stitch. So you skip one, and that's how we end up using up the space of 3 stitches. Our bead goes into one, we skip one, and then our extended single crochet goes in this last part of the repeat and makes it look like these beads are in a box. So to do an extended single crochet, we're going to insert our hook and draw a loop to the front, and then yarn over and basically put a chain into the top of that. So kind of like we were doing a single crochet, but instead we just drew the loop up and kept it going. That's an extended single crochet. So we're going to yarn over and draw the yarn through both of the loops on our hook, and there you have it. You've got the bead part and the wall to the box, if you will. And this part, the bottom of this one, looks a little bit bigger than the top part, but usually they should look pretty much the same, like you've got 2 chains on top of each other. At this point, you start the whole process over again. So in the very next stitch, you're going to do another bead. Now the next stitch here is a chain. So I'm going to go ahead and work into the chains for this repeat. I'm going to start as though I'm doing a double crochet stitch. Like this, start by creating part of the post, and then I'm going to yarn over, work behind, yarn over again, do that 3 times. So I've got all these wraps of yarn around my post, yarn over, bring it through all of those, and then yarn over again and go through the last 2 loops on my hook. Okay, that's another bead. I'm going to skip the middle chain here in our groups of 3 and do my extended single crochet, bring my my yarn up, and you do have this diagonal piece of yarn that just, you know, gets pulled across that entire space, and typically you don't really notice it once you're done because it kind of gets hidden by the bead, but you can see it at the back if you look at the back there. Okay, so that's the repeat for the blocked bead stitch, and if you just remember that each blocked bead stitch needs to take up a space of 3, it makes it pretty easy to keep them lined up and stay on track, because you shouldn't have a bead straddling in between an open space and a set of 3 double crochets in this round, because each one is supposed to go right on top of them. So starting here, I'm going to go right into my next bead, and I'm going to work across. I'm going to put 1 bead here, 1 bead here, and 1 bead here, and then I'll do my corner. So each side of your square should have 5 of these beads when you're done, and that's how we'll get around this entire part of our square. So, oh, one thing I did want to mention though is that back here in the chain space, I worked my blocked bead stitches, the repeat, into the chains. If you are more comfortable, you can just work the repeat into the chain space. You can try them both ways and see which one works better for you. I'm going to work this one into the chain space and the extended single crochet as well, and see. I have a preference. I think that I prefer a little bit to work them into the chains because I think it helps to keep them lined up, but I think ultimately it doesn't really matter that much. So you pick whichever. Here is the side of the square with all 5 blocked bead stitches. Once you have done your entire edge in the blocked bead stitch, all that's left to do is to add in the last color and do a round of just double crocheting into the top of every stitch and doing our same corners to increase there. And the only thing you need to keep in mind is that for the backs of the blocked bead stitches, you do need to do 2 stitches into the top of the blocked bead stitch because we skipped a stitch there. So do a stitch, or if you're doing it from the front, you could honestly flip this square over in between every round if you want, but whether you're doing it from the front or the back, you need to do a stitch into the top of the extended single crochets and 2 stitches into the tops of the actual bead stitch. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that, and then we will be all done with our square. Okay, and here it is in action. I went ahead and added the clay color for our final round, round 5, and after doing a normal corner, obviously the double crochet stitches from the previous corner, they each get a stitch, and then into the top of the blocked bead, we get to the bead stitch first, so I'm going to do 2 double crochet stitches into the top of that, and then 1. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of stick it in between the beads here, but technically it's going into the top of the extended single crochet. You're going to repeat that all the way around, and as you can see, it lays nice and flat because we've added our skipped stitch back in. So just continue to do this all the way around the round, slip stitch when you're done. And here it is, a completed square with the ends woven in. It's ready to be blocked or to go straight into your project. Thanks for making it with me.